The auction hall smelled of rust, smoke, and fear. Captain Rian Hale walked through it slowly, each step heavy as if his boots carried the weight of every memory he wanted to forget. He hated places like this, dark markets where living beings were treated like objects, where pain was sold like merchandise. But this time, he came because someone whispered to him that there was a child here who would not survive another night. And Rian Hale, despite everything the universe had taken from him, could never walk away from a dying child. He moved between cages, ignoring the stares, the taunts, the cruel laughter of the slavers. Many of them knew him by reputation. Humans had a strange name out here among the stars, the species that refused to break. Some feared them. Some mocked them. Some simply didn't understand them. But everyone agreed on one thing: humans were stubborn, and Rian Hale was one of the worst of them. The slaver chief came forward with a wide grin. He was an insectoid creature with a tall frame and glassy blue eyes that reflected the lights above. His mandibles clicked together in amusement. "Human, you came again," he said. "Looking for trouble? Or maybe comfort?" Rian didn't answer. He kept walking until the chief stepped directly in his path. "We have something special today," the chief said, voice thick with pride. "A gift for you. You humans enjoy fixing things, yes?" Rian's eyes narrowed. "I'm not here for gifts. Oh, but you will want this one." The chief snapped his claws, and two guards dragged a small metal crate into the open. Something inside the crate whimpered, a soft, fragile sound that made Rian's heart clench. The sound didn't belong in a place like this. The crate opened. Inside was a girl. She was small, no older than 12 in human years, with pale silver skin, cracked like shattered crystal. Her hair, thin and almost transparent, clung to her face. Her violet eyes flickered in and out like a fading light. Every breath she took sounded like it scraped through broken lungs. A shock collar, cruel and too tight, burned around her neck. She tried to sit back, to protect herself, but her limbs were weak. She trembled like someone who expected pain every moment. "She is useless to us," the chief said casually. "Broken, dying, no value as a worker. No value as a slave. But perhaps," his grin widened, "perhaps you want a toy? Something to pass time? She will not last long anyway." Rian didn't move for a moment. His hands slowly curled into fists at his sides. A toy. They offered him a dying child as a toy. Rian kneeled beside the crate. The girl flinched, trying to make herself smaller. Her skin was cold, so cold it scared him. He lifted her wrist gently, checking her pulse. It fluttered weakly under his fingers like a candle fighting a storm. Her cracked skin revealed faint light inside her body, but it pulsed unevenly. He had seen injuries like this only once before: trauma, mixed with starvation, exhaustion, and fear. Someone had beaten her, drained her energy, and kept her alive only long enough to sell her. She whispered something, voice barely a breath. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the fear. Rian looked up slowly, meeting the chief's eyes with a calmness so cold that even the guards took a step back. "How long has she been like this?" Rian asked. 3 days, the chief said. "Maybe 4. She will die soon. So we thought to give her to you. Humans like strange things, yes?" Rian stood up. The hall fell silent. "I'll take her," he said. The chief smiled triumphantly. "Excellent choice, see?" "I knew, but hear me well," Rian interrupted, voice low, sharp, dangerous. "I'm not taking her for fun. And I'm not taking her for you." He leaned close, his eyes burning with something ancient and fierce. "I'm taking her because you broke her. And humans do not leave the broken behind." The chief's smile faded. Rian tightened the strap of his medical bag. "And I swear," he said softly, "I will heal her, even if I have to fight death itself." For the first time, the slavers stopped laughing, because humans were many things, but when a human made a promise like that, it was never just words. Rian carried her out of the auction hall as if she weighed nothing, but in truth, every step felt like carrying the weight of 1,000 stars. The girl's body was fragile, trembling with each movement. Her breaths were shallow, each one a small victory against the darkness threatening to swallow her. He could feel the faint pulse under his fingers, a heartbeat, so weak it was almost gone. The corridor outside smelled of oil and metal. Rian ignored the slavers yelling behind him. He didn't care about threats, bullets, or alien claws. Nothing mattered except the small broken life in his arms. He whispered softly, though he didn't know if she could understand him. "It's okay. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." She didn't respond, only flinched when he adjusted her position. Her violet eyes, so dim and scared, looked up at him. For a moment, he thought he saw a spark, just a flicker, a tiny shimmer, but it was enough to give him hope. Rian reached his ship, an old human freighter patched with scars from battles long ago. The engines hummed as he lifted her inside. He laid her gently on a medical bed, carefully removing the collar that burned her neck. The marks were deep, angry red lines, and he could feel her pain in his chest as though it were his own. He opened his medical kit. There were supplies, yes, healing gels, synthetic patches, nutrient injectors, but nothing could immediately fix the trauma. Nothing could instantly restore her shattered body. He worked slowly, cleaning wounds, setting broken bones, applying gels that glowed faintly against her pale skin. Every touch made her flinch, but he spoke gently, telling her stories in a quiet, soothing voice. "You're not alone. Not anymore. I won't leave you. Not now, not ever." Hours passed. The station outside fell silent as most beings slept. But Rian did not rest. Every now and then, the girl's breathing would falter, her pulse would slow, and he would panic, feeling as though her life might slip through his fingers. Once she convulsed lightly, and Rian held her down, whispering words of encouragement, pressing warmth into her frozen body. "This is not how your story ends," he said. "Not if I am here." Her body was not just broken. It was fighting death. Her system was shutting down, organs failing, limbs refusing to obey. But Rian refused to give in. He connected nutrient tubes directly to her veins, adjusted her breathing rhythm, and monitored her vitals constantly. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but he would not stop. Sleep was impossible. Rest was impossible. Not when she was slipping away. At one point, he leaned back, running a hand through his hair, and looked at her. She was so small, so fragile, a life so easily extinguished. And yet, something in her eyes whispered at him, not fear, not pain, but a quiet, fragile hope. He whispered again, "Hold on. Just a little longer. You can do this." Time passed slowly. Minutes stretched into hours. Slowly, imperceptibly, her pulse grew stronger. Her breaths became deeper, steadier. The faint light in her violet eyes grew brighter, a flicker of life returning. It was not a miracle yet, but a start. Rian leaned over her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You're going to make it. I promise you that. I will fight for you until the stars burn out." The girl looked at him, her lips trembling. She tried to speak, to whisper something, but only a broken sound came out. Rian smiled gently. "I understand. I hear you. And I hear your heart fighting to stay alive." In that quiet moment, with the hum of the ship surrounding them, Rian Hale, human, stubborn, unyielding, realized something. It wasn't just her life he was saving, it was a testament to what humans could do. Where others saw brokenness, humans saw possibility. Where others turned away, humans fought. Where others gave up, humans challenged death itself. And he would. He had brought her back from the edge once, and he would do it again and again if he had to. The first night passed. She slept for a long time, finally safe in the warmth of the freighter. And Rian, sitting beside her, allowed himself a brief moment to feel it, relief. A tiny, fleeting relief. But he knew the fight was far from over. Healing her body was only the start. Healing her mind, her spirit, the shattered trust in the universe. That would take far longer. Still, he whispered one last thing before he rested his head on his hand, eyes never leaving her fragile form. "You survived today. Tomorrow we fight together. And I swear, nothing will ever hurt you like this again." The next morning, the freighter's engines hummed softly, carrying them through the silent void between stars. Rian watched the girl sleep, her chest rising and falling steadily, and for a moment, he allowed himself to breathe. But he knew better than to believe that healing would be simple. Broken bodies healed faster than broken hearts. And hers carried more than physical scars. It carried fear, pain, and the cruelty of those who saw her as nothing more than a toy. Her name, Rian discovered later from fragments of language and gestures, was Lyra. The alien syllables rolled softly in his mind. He liked the sound of it, even if she couldn't speak them fully yet. Lyra's violet eyes flickered when she sensed his presence. Like tiny stars struggling to shine through a black sky, Rian spent the day moving carefully around her, adjusting monitors, cleaning burns, and applying soothing gels. Every touch had to be gentle, every movement precise. One wrong move, and she could slip back toward the edge. He spoke to her constantly, though she rarely answered. Humans had a strange way of communicating with life, even when the other species didn't understand them. Words were only part of it. Tone, warmth, intent, these carried as much meaning as the words themselves. "Lyra, I'm here. Nothing can touch you now. You are safe," he whispered softly. He smiled faintly when her fingers twitched slightly, a small, almost imperceptible reaction. A spark of recognition, a flicker of trust, but trust would be harder to build than her broken bones. Later, when the ship passed near an uncharted planet, alarms rang out. Sensors detected something approaching fast, an unauthorized vessel, sleek and black, moving with deadly precision. Rian didn't flinch. Humans had a reputation for calm in the storm. The ship's intruders were bounty hunters. Hired by the same slavers who had tried to sell Lyra, they had tracked her signal. And now they wanted to claim what they believed was theirs. Rian tightened his hands on the controls, his eyes sharp, unblinking. He couldn't allow them to take her. Not again. Not ever. "Stay here," he said, voice firm, though his gaze never left her. She stirred, tried to speak, but he shook his head gently. "I've got this." Within minutes, the freighter became a battlefield in space. Lasers cut through darkness, alarms screamed, and the ship shook violently. Rian moved with precision, his hands and mind working in perfect synchrony. Dodging attacks, countering, and pushing the ship to its limits. Inside, Lyra clutched the edge of her bed. Eyes wide with fear, but she did not scream. Somehow she sensed that he would protect her. Somehow in the depths of her shattered trust, she understood that this human was different. Hours seemed like minutes. When the fight finally ended, the intruders were gone, disabled or fleeing. The freighter had scratches and dents, but it was intact. Rian sat back, breathing hard. He wiped his forehead and glanced at Lyra. She had watched the entire ordeal, and now her small hand reached out, brushing lightly against his arm. A gesture simple and fragile, but it spoke more than words ever could. "You're safe," he whispered, voice low but heavy with emotion. "I promise. No one can touch you." For the first time since he had brought her from the auction hall, Lyra's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, not yet, but a small, delicate acknowledgement. Her eyes glimmered faintly. She trusted him just a little. Rian realized something important in that moment. Healing her wasn't just about medicine. It was about safety. It was about proving to her, slowly, that not all beings wanted to hurt her. That the universe wasn't entirely cruel. That someone, at least, would fight for her without asking anything in return. As the freighter drifted back into the starry void, Rian kept his hand near her, ready to move at a moment's notice. He knew the battle outside was over, but the greater battle was still ahead, saving her spirit, rebuilding her broken world, and teaching her to hope again. For now, though, he allowed himself to feel a quiet satisfaction. She had survived another day. She had survived her first fight outside the auction hall. And Rian Hale, stubborn, unyielding human, knew that he would face 1,000 more battles if it meant she could live. And he would no matter what, because some promises, once made, were stronger than death itself. Days passed aboard the freighter. Yet every day was a challenge. Lyra's body was slowly mending, burns fading, broken bones knitting together, but her eyes carried shadows that no medicine could touch. Fear, distrust, and the memory of cruelty lingered in the smallest corners of her mind. Rian understood that healing her would take more than hands and tools. It would take patience, trust, and the kind of human stubbornness that refused to let the broken stay broken. He spent hours by her side, talking, explaining, even joking quietly to make her respond. Sometimes she only listened, her eyes distant. Yet slowly she began to imitate his words. Small attempts at speech that made Rian smile. Even if it was just a small twitch of her lips. "Lyra," he said softly one morning as she tried to sit up with shaky limbs. "Look at me. You're stronger than you think. Every day, a little stronger." Her violet eyes blinked at him, searching his face, hesitating. Then a small nod. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Rian knew that the mind healed slower than the body. Every time she flinched at a sudden sound, every time her hand twitched as though expecting pain, he reminded himself that patience was a weapon stronger than any laser. And humans, more than most, had infinite patience when it came to saving lives. That night, he watched her sleep and noticed her hands trembling. He reached out, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "It's okay. I'm right here. Nothing will hurt you." Her eyelids fluttered and she whispered something soft. He didn't understand the words, but the sound was a gift. It was the first time she tried to speak freely, without fear. He pressed a hand gently over hers. "I hear you. I understand," he said that the days were not easy. There were nights when she refused to eat, when her body ached, and when nightmares pulled her back into the horrors of the auction hall. Rian learned to sit with her through the worst moments, holding her hand, keeping his presence a shield against the darkness. He did not sleep much, choosing instead to monitor her, soothe her, and remind her that she was safe. One evening, as the freighter drifted past a distant blue star, Lyra finally spoke a word clearly: safe. Rian's heart clenched. That single word carried more weight than any medal or victory in battle. She had begun to trust. She had begun to hope. And humans, Rian knew, thrived on hope. They fought harder, loved deeper, and refused to surrender when there was still life to protect. But healing was not linear. A sudden shiver would grip her, a flashback to the collars and chains, and she would collapse into silence. Each time, Rian's hands hovered over her, ready to catch her if she fell, ready to shield her from her own memories. He began teaching her simple things. Words, gestures, small games. He laughed softly when she dropped a tool or mispronounced a word. She frowned, tried again, and finally smiled, a faint, fragile smile that shone brighter than the distant stars outside. "You're learning fast," he said, eyes gentle. "One day, you'll be stronger than anyone thinks." "Even me." She tilted her head, violet eyes shining with something almost human curiosity. It was rare for her species to show such expression so openly, but humans had a way of bringing it out. They brought warmth where cold had ruled, light where darkness had lived too long. Rian realized then that healing her wasn't just about survival. It was about giving her life back in a way no one had ever offered. She had been broken, discarded, and mocked, but humans, stubborn and unrelenting, refused to leave the broken behind. The night deepened, and Lyra finally slept peacefully, her breaths steady and even. Rian stayed by her side, watching over her as the stars passed silently outside. His hands rested near hers, and for the first time since he had found her, he allowed himself a small thought. Maybe, just maybe, she could recover fully. And in that quiet moment, floating through the cold darkness of space, Rian Hall, human, stubborn, unyielding, promised himself once more he would not fail her. No matter the cost, no matter the danger, no matter how many battles or nights it took, he would heal her completely, not just her body, but her heart, her mind, her spirit, because some lives were worth defying the universe for, because some promises were stronger than fear, stronger than death itself. Days turned into a week, and the freighter continued its journey through the stars. Lyra's body was improving. Her burns had mostly healed, her broken bones were strong again, and her fragile frame no longer shook with every breath. But her heart, her mind, the invisible scars of fear, remained delicate, like glass waiting to break. Rian knew this better than anyone. Healing her trust would be harder than healing her body. Every movement, every word, every look had to be careful. He watched her closely, always ready to step in if she flinched, always ready to remind her that she was safe. One morning, he found her sitting quietly near the viewport, staring at the endless black dotted with stars. Her violet eyes reflected the distant suns, and for the first time, she seemed almost calm, almost peaceful. Rian walked over slowly, hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Lyra," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "You don't have to be afraid. Not here. Not with me." She blinked, unsure. Her hands curled around her knees, but she didn't move away. "That was progress. I want to teach you something today," Rian continued. "Something simple. Something fun." Her eyes flickered with curiosity. She didn't speak the words yet, but her small nod told him she was listening. He pulled out a small holographic puzzle from his kit, a simple game. Nothing dangerous, nothing that could hurt her. "See this?" he asked. "It's like life sometimes. Pieces broken, scattered. But when you work carefully, you can put them together, and the picture becomes whole again." Lyra's small fingers trembled as she reached for the holographic pieces. Her hands were still weak, her movements unsure, but she tried. And Rian guided her gently, never forcing, never rushing. Minutes passed and slowly, the scattered pieces began to connect. She looked up at him, eyes wide, a small smile forming. Rian's heart clenched. A simple puzzle, yes, but to see her try, to see her hope for the first time in what felt like forever. It was a victory greater than any battle he had fought. "You did it," he said quietly. "You finished it. You made it whole." She looked at the puzzle, then back at him. Her lips quivered, and she whispered a single word. "Together." Rian's chest tightened. That small word carried everything: trust, hope, connection. She had said it freely, of her own will. She had begun to believe that someone cared. Someone would stay. For the rest of the day, they worked together on more puzzles, games, and exercises. Every time she succeeded, she would look up at him, violet eyes shining with quiet triumph. Every time she failed, he would reassure her gently, guiding her with patience, never raising his voice, never showing frustration. As night fell, the freighter quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Lyra curled up under a blanket near the medical bed. Rian sat beside her, watching her chest rise and fall steadily. "You're learning fast," he said softly. "Not just puzzles. You're learning to trust. And that's even harder." She glanced at him, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. It wasn't full trust yet, but it was there. A small flame, fragile but alive. And Rian knew he would protect it. He stayed awake long after she fell asleep, thinking about how far she had come in just 1 week. She had survived cruelty, pain, and the auction hall, and she was still here, breathing, growing stronger. Humans had a saying: the broken can rise again if someone believes in them. And Rian believed fully, without doubt, without hesitation. Outside, the stars drifted past, cold and distant, but inside the freighter, a small warmth had returned. Lyra's trust was growing. Her spirit was awakening. And Rian Hale, stubborn, unyielding human, had learned something important too: that saving a life was never just about keeping a body alive. It was about rekindling hope, restoring faith, and proving that even the smallest, most broken beings could survive. He smiled faintly, resting a hand lightly on hers. "We're in this together, Lyra," he whispered. "Always together. I'll never leave you." And for the first time, she believed it, just a little. But it was enough. For weeks, life aboard the freighter became a fragile rhythm. Lyra's body grew stronger, her steps steadier, and her small hands no longer trembled with constant fear. Yet the shadows of her past still haunted her. Every sudden noise, every flash of light, made her flinch. Every unfamiliar sound made her heart race. She had survived horrors no child should ever face, and the echoes of those moments clung to her like a second skin. Rian watched her closely, always patient, always ready. He had learned to read the slightest twitch of her eyes, the smallest shift in her posture, the subtle change in her breathing. Humans were stubborn, yes, but they were also deeply perceptive. And he had learned that saving someone meant seeing the invisible wounds, the ones hidden beneath skin and bone. One quiet night, while the freighter drifted near a calm nebula, alarms suddenly blared. The ship shook violently. Sensors detected an incoming vessel faster, more precise, more dangerous than the last intruders. Lyra froze, eyes wide with terror. Her small frame shook as memories of the auction hall, of cages and cruel laughter, rushed back like a tidal wave. Rian's hand found hers instantly. "It's okay," he said firmly, though inside he felt the same surge of adrenaline. "I'm here. I will protect you. Nothing will touch you." The freighter shuddered again as the intruders fired. Rian moved with calculated precision, dodging laser blasts, steering the ship through sharp maneuvers. He could feel the hum of the engines in his bones, the weight of the danger pressing against him, but he did not let it shake his focus. Every move he made was for her, every evasive turn, every countermeasure, every decision. Inside the cabin, Lyra pressed herself against the wall, shaking. She wanted to run, to hide, but she couldn't move past the fear. Her eyes met Rian's, and in them, she saw calm, strength, and determination. He smiled at her, small but certain. "Trust me," he said softly. "I will not let them take you." It was a simple phrase, but it carried weight. She believed him. For the first time, she felt that someone was fighting not for gain, not for power, but just for her. That someone existed solely to keep her safe. Minutes stretched into eternity as the battle raged outside. The intruders were relentless, but Rian's skill and determination proved stronger. The freighter shook, lights flickered, and the alarms screamed. But slowly, the danger passed. The intruders retreated, leaving the ship battered but intact. Rian exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. He looked at Lyra. She was trembling, but she was alive. Her violet eyes met his, and a small trembling smile formed on her lips. She whispered, almost inaudible, "Safe." Rian's chest tightened. That single word, spoken after weeks of fear, after the chaos and terror, was more than a sign of survival. It was proof that she trusted him, truly trusted him. It was a moment of victory, quiet but powerful, stronger than any battle in the void outside. He knelt beside her, taking her hand in his. Yes, you're safe, he said softly. And I promise I will keep you safe, always. The night returned to calm, and the stars drifted past silently outside. Lyra leaned slightly against him, seeking the warmth and reassurance she had come to depend on. And Rian realized something profound. Saving her was no longer just about her body. It was about her spirit, her soul, her ability to hope again. Humans, he thought, had a strange power. They could endure, protect, and heal, not just through strength, but through patience, compassion, and the stubborn refusal to let life slip away. And he had become that power for her. As she drifted into sleep once more, resting her head against his arm, Rian whispered softly, more to himself than to her, "No one will ever hurt you again. Not while I live. Not while I breathe. I will fight for you, against the stars themselves if I have to." For the first time since the auction hall, Lyra slept peacefully through the night. And for the first time, Rian allowed himself a small moment of quiet pride. The journey was far from over, but together they were stronger than fear. Together they were unbroken, because some promises once made were stronger than death. And some humans, once determined, could defy the universe itself to keep them.